Great, how are you? How's it going? Pretty well.
As we're waiting to get started, if you want to, we have two surveys or two interactives that we'd like you to participate in. So if you could do work on that before we get started, we appreciate it.
Greatest morning to you. Welcome.
Oh, and you got your KPI. That's awesome.
One day a year I wear it. I'm lining up to the back because that would have made me crazy.
Close enough? Yeah. Hi guys. Morning. Everybody got in okay? Everybody got some chocolate for breakfast? Couple housekeeping things. If you have any devices in your pockets or on your laps, please turn your ringers off. Fire regulations require everyone has a chair. Please do not stand in the aisles or sit on the floor. If you have a device plugged into a wall, please be aware that your device may get stepped on or sat on. Please keep it up against the wall and be aware of your cords. And if anyone needs Act 48 credit hours, I have the QR code that you can scan, or it's also on the Pete and C website. If you're following Pete and C on Remind, the code is Pete 2019. It's printed incorrectly in your booklets. And this is data does not have to be a 4-letter word, with Kathleen Post and Brooke Langman. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. How are you? I was going to say, if Alice Keeler didn't wake us up, then we'll do our best to try to wake you up too. So we would like you to just hop in if you haven't hopped in to either one of those. There is a survey and a Padlet that we'd like you to participate in, and we'll be getting to both of those in a few minutes.
I don't know that your link is working because I can't get to it.
Yeah,
The one on the
left.
The one on the left you're not getting into? Yeah. Is that QR code not even working? Okay.
It worked for me because I just tried it.
And it worked for some people,
Yeah,
but I'm just spinning.
It took a while to open. It did.
It's
Opening with the link.
taxing the system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think we're taxing the system because we're all trying to get there. That was pretty amazing downstairs, though, that we got 540 whatever on Alice's.
I see a few people getting into the left-hand survey, so thank you. We appreciate that as you go on. Are you ready to jump in?
And just so you know, and if you want to keep trying, we also have the information on the session for today, the handouts. There's a handout for participation instruction, so this information's in there. So if you try again a little bit later, maybe we'll get it and scattered a little bit.
Okay, so welcome to Data Doesn't Have to Be a 4-letter word. I'm the person who would say 4-letter words every time I looked at data, until I met this woman. As an English teacher, I was like, there's no way, I'm not looking at it, you can't scare me into looking at a spreadsheet. And it wasn't until I met Kathy that I realized it didn't have to be a 4-letter word. So really that is our goal today, is that Kathy can transcend some of her data knowledge on you so you don't feel like I felt, and you can share that with teachers that you work with.
And then I thought it was kind of a perfect segue because I didn't know what Alice was going to talk about today, but she did tweet this several weeks ago, that data is not a 4-letter word, old data is. And you can tell how Alice uses data. Did you see it today? She did that Google form and used the data, our responses, immediately in her slides. So really the point of our presentation was that. I had no idea that's what Alice was going to talk about today.
Nice
but
segue.
Being able to, not wait till we get home, her describing, the idea of having a stack of papers. I go home, I grade it at home. Eventually I get those stack of papers back to the kids. Like, the whole point is that we're able to use that data in the moment to help guide our instruction, guide our discussions, hopefully help our students learn. But I think the other powerful part of it is being able to hear our students and get their voice. And so I love that, the idea of old data is.
And I like that little picture, because that's Kathy and me. So let's just take a few seconds. I'll start. My name is Brooke Langen. I currently, 3 years ago, left my instructional technology coaching job in my district and actually went over and took a position at our university, East Stroudsburg University, and became the director of field experience because I had taught, I really enjoyed the classroom, but I really wanted to give back to education, and this was the opportunity to work with pre-service teachers and share what I knew. And I think the biggest thing that I found is when I went over to the university setting, they weren't using technology like we were using technology, and I went, really? So that has sort of really become a focus with us, with our student teachers and all of our pre-service teachers. And data is one of those points that we try to make with the students. We try to explain to them the importance. Kathy and I were discussing, I got my certification in 1996. I didn't even learn what the word formative assessment was. We had one assessment, it was summative, and it was either subjective or objective, I remember that, and I would always confuse the two. And now our kids that are going out to be teachers have so much on their plates. So technology is allowing us to get them to engage with it better than probably we would when we started our careers. So Kathy, I'll let you introduce yourself.
So I've been, my name is Kathy Post. I've been at the university now for 4 years. I was hired the year before Brooke came on as our assessment and accreditation person, and that really involved dealing with all of the data in terms of our student teaching program, which was really important because that's what we have to send to the state. It's what we have to use to help support our national accreditation efforts. And so my job is really I work in data. That's what I do.
And so that's the job that I never ever want to have in my life.
Oh.
I never want to be where she was. That was the first thing I said. I said, oh good, I'm so glad we have you because I need data.
Well, but then just so you all know, I'm also a former math teacher and also worked as a content developer. So for years I created online lessons. So I certainly was immersed in education, and so this role took me in a different direction, but still with the idea being involved with education. So like I mentioned, my world was numbers, okay? I spent days in my office, and one of the things when I got to the university that shocked me is that pretty much everybody thought I was the data person, and that I was the only one who should be caring about the data. And I thought that was a little shocking because I thought that data was everywhere, okay? My classroom, I was constantly gathering data, whether it's through quizzes or assessments while I was working with kids. So I didn't understand this whole concept that data was just all about me. And so that was a mindset that I decided I needed to start changing at the university. That wasn't just about me.
So Kathy started, when I first came on, oh my goodness, they were doing paper and pencil sign-ins for practicum, taking 15 minutes. I'm like, how about a QR code in their phone? And they were like, oh, you could do that? Yes, we can do that. So we started speeding things up for our students and for our faculty. But what was really neat is that Kathy, this was my vision of data. But every practicum, anytime we met with students or teachers, we would send out a survey. And we'd get all of this information back. And I remember looking at Kathy after my first full year there, and I said, okay, well, we took all that. What do we do with it? And she said, oh, there's lots we can do with it. And as soon as we opened that can of worms and started talking about what do we do with data once we have it, it's all started to make sense. So no longer was it just taking numbers and crunching them in a spreadsheet. We started to look at the whole picture. And I think one thing that came across to us was, if you're not going to use the data, don't collect it. There's no reason. If you're not looking at the data that you collect, whether it's in a survey, whether it's something in your classroom, and you're not going to look at it and analyze it, or let your students look at it and analyze it, why did you do it? And that really has become our mantra. We're only going to ask for data when we know that we can look at it and we can share it back with our audience.
So you can go ahead and hit play, but I'll talk while this is going. Yeah. So one of my real first kind of epiphanies, like I said, I was trying to change kind of the culture of the place where I was at and say, you know what, we're going to use some of this data that we're getting, because there's lots of the numerical. Remember I said I have to deal with all the PDE stuff and accreditation. So all that was important. But we were also getting lots of just comments in our surveys. And some of the things, for instance, was we would ask our students to tell us about their student teaching experience, tell us about their cooperating teacher. And I was getting these awesome comments about our cooperating teachers, but nobody knew it. I was like, so I'm getting these spreadsheets, raw data, but nobody else knew. So I was like, you know what? I'm a technology specialist. I know something about technology. Let's create a video. And so that was my first attempt at starting to share data out with our partners, with our stakeholders, with our faculty, with our school districts. And that just sort of started us on this cycle of thinking bigger and broader about what data is.
So when Kathy said we started looking at this data together, and we said, oh my gosh, these kids are seeing such great things. Do the teachers know they're saying this? And she said, no, they don't. And so we talked about it, and she said, well, you know, I'm going to put together a video, and I'm going to share this out with everybody. And so then I took the data back to my office and said to my secretary, you know what? This needs to be mail merged out to all of our cooperating teachers so that they can individually see the difference, the impact they made. So she mail merged it out into nice little cards that we sent out individually to every cooperating teacher that said good things. We avoided the ones that said bad things, so we did manually go through the data and make sure that we weren't sending something negative to one of our cooperating teachers. And that happened in June, right when they left the school year. And boy, did we got tons of emails that said, thank you for sending that. That was really nice. It really sort of was the culminating piece to my year. I was really tired at the end, but when I saw the difference that I made, so it was a good use of data that I never had considered.
And then this was a survey that we had had in place for years, so before I even got there. So it kind of tells you that really nobody had ever been thinking about what we were asking or why we were using it. You can go ahead and move to the next one. But then I started thinking more purposely. So Brooke mentioned, you know, we have practicum, we meet with students, we meet with teachers all the time, we meet with faculty for different things. And a lot of times our data collection efforts would be, you know, the stickies on the wall or maybe the post-it notes at the tables. then somehow we'd get all that information back, but it was all like scattered and haphazard, and I was like, we need to be a little more intentional about, you know, could we use technology to help us get the data we need, but different kinds of data for the purposes to help us, whether it's improving our program, getting ideas, generating ideas. And so that started me at a class to really start sharing with our students, thinking about using technology in this way of kind of being I call it the investigator, or somebody that's just really concerned about learning as much as they can. And so this translates over into how I work with our student teachers, in thinking about using technology to help them to learn about what their students know, as well as to help them inform instruction.
So it's not just about the teacher being the investigator of the students and how do you improve your lessons, how do you affect that, but it's getting the kids to really look at this too. And I know that if the mindset for me as an adult was, I hate data, imagine what it is for a third grader. If you say that to them, they go, yeah, I know what that is, that's sort of scary, so I'm not going to do that. So one of our missions was to make sure that our students knew how to go to their students and analyze it and say, what are you seeing here? And pausing and taking time to analyze rather than just buzz through. So we want both the teacher and the student to be the investigators.
And of course, you know, all of our work, we were doing it based on certain sets of standards. And one set of standards that came out as we were working really on our instructional technology, what were we going to do moving forward to support our students in that area, came from the new ISTE standards for educators. And I don't know if you looked at it close, but the new standards talk very specifically about using data and this concept of the teacher being the analyst. So this was one area when we did our first kind of initial blush of assessments. We recognized this was an area at the university where we weren't doing a great job with at all. And so this is one area we said, you know what, we're going to focus on this. And what we're going to share with you today, just some of the tools that we share with our students, some of the strategies that we try to say with students as our student teachers, is really to kind of get them starting to think about using technology beyond just the cool tool, as Weston would have talked about yesterday.
We also use it to hook our faculty. Those
Yes.
are the folks that we really want to bring over so that they can start modeling this, these types of tools and behaviors so that it becomes ingrained in our students and isn't a standalone. And they don't see it as like, okay, gee, I'm doing a Kahoot. But if I saw my professor doing this on a regular basis to assess what I was learning through the process, it's going to become more natural. And that's why I think as classroom teachers, when we use it regularly with our students, it's natural to them. So that was another piece, was trying to take that over to a different audience who had not been forced. And I think as a K-12 educator, we were forced a lot of times. You were given a computer, you were given email, then you were given a cart, then you were given one-to-one. You're like, holy cow, I better figure out what I'm going to do with this, or something's going to be wrong. That's not the way it is at the university, but we need to force our professors to see that, yes, you've got to come with that tide. You have to ride the wave.
So, you know, we're working with pre-service teachers, but again, working with teachers in general. This idea of formative assessment is not new, and there's benefits doing it on paper versus technology. Just as Alice mentioned this morning, not everything should be digital. But if I'm going to talk to pre-service teachers about trying to integrate technology, one of the areas that I talk to them about that's an easy access point, like something that we can do that is meaningful, especially in the constraints of our classrooms that we're sending them into, because we don't know how much technology they have. We don't know if all the kids will have devices, and et cetera. So one of the places where it's an easy access point for our students is to think about technology for formative assessment. And obviously the benefits, we saw it today with Alice's talk, real-time insight, increasing student participation voice. Today was great to see 540 people collaborating on that one document. I always talk about the fact that as a student, I was the one who sat in the class and hoped that the teacher would never call on me because I was the quiet and shy one. And so having the opportunity to participate this way gives every student, and even if they are the shy one, I bet you'll turn them on and they'll start talking even more.
I think that what stood out to me this morning was one of the directions said, put in Y and then put your name. and there was very few people that put their name. So that to me, that speaks to the audience wants to participate. Your students want to participate, but they may not be ready to own what they're saying, but it should be out there. So we should give them these opportunities and allow them to have some anonymity when they're responding.
Okay, and so we're trying to teach our teacher candidates that it also provides opportunities for immediate feedback. So we want them to not just play the game, not just do the activity and get the data back or get the responses back, but then also stop and see if there's immediate feedback they can give, whether it's individual feedback or as a whole group. And then also, as all of us know, formative assessment is to help us adapt and modify our instruction.
So we put together, actually Kathy put this together, Kathy put together this awesome list of tech tools that can support formative assessment. Probably lots of these you have already used, and you may not have thought about them in a formative assessment way. So we are actually going to take time to go through each one of these areas and share with you how we are using them as formative assessment and how you might want to use them in your classrooms or with your teachers that you provide professional development for. So I'll hold 1 second while everybody gets a picture. Okay. And I remember the first time I wanted to take notes somewhere, my daughter looked at me and said, "Mom, just take a picture." And I was like, I'm a technology coach and I'm going to think to take a picture. So I like when Alice said, let your kids teach you and be okay with that, because I think how many technology coaches do we have in here, or instructional technology specialists? Letting them have that opportunity, telling those teachers that it's okay not to know, I think for me was one of the biggest hurdles. Letting them know that it was okay not to know everything, but you still had to try.
Okay, so Alice gave us a fantastic example this morning of just using Google Forms as a way to gather, and I'm using word data, but it's responses, gathering the comments, the voice, what students think. That's really all it is. I love Google Forms because they keep evolving. They've got quiz mode. I love it because you can look at the summary of responses and look at the graphs and charts that Google Forms already creates for you. So again, remember, this is an access point. And so if you've got teachers who aren't into spreadsheets and numbers and data, great thing is Google already does it for you. So they don't have to create their own lovely pie charts. Let the Google form do it for you. I love the idea of exporting it to sheets, okay? And obviously, because my world is data, I'm not that scared of spreadsheets. And even with what Alice was saying this morning about the script, I don't know how to do that yet, but now I want to learn because it seemed pretty easy. But the sheets give us that raw data that I know sometimes is intimidating for our students or our teachers, but that gives you a whole nother option of being able to work with the data.
And I was trying to manipulate the data over here, because that's sort of how Kathy and I work. One of us is a superhero, then the other person's a sidekick. I was just trying to be the sidekick on the iPad, and it didn't work. So, we were going to show you your data, but just like Alice, sometimes you get a little hiccup in the system. So this last semester, we asked the students for one word to describe their student teaching experience. And just reflect on it, because we were in our last, they were getting ready to hit yes, apply, send in my certification application to Tim's. It was exciting, and so I put a little survey together and they answered this, and then Kathy was the sidekick superhero in the back, putting it all together to a word cloud. And when the kids saw that, it really resonated that they all had a very similar experience. And it was a really positive experience, even though there were sometimes, I don't know if that one has it on, some of them had
Training.
What was that? Training, yes, fast. But it was very similar. And showing them this really helped them understand, okay, I can analyze data visually too. And so we talk about different ways of using word clouds. I know that history teachers that have used it to analyze speeches, State of the Union addresses. Word clouds really take that word-based data and make it easy to understand. And so for me, this is wonderful because I'm visual and it makes it easy.
And then I'll just hit pause there, thinking about it from the technical side of things. So all I did was pull it out as my spreadsheet. I had a column of words. I just copied that column of words pasted it into the word cloud. Boom, that was it.
So we're using wordclouds.com. We are big fans of Tuxedo. What's the first one? Wordle. For
They
some
don't work
reason they don't
anymore.
work on our computers right. You have to have that
Right.
Silverlight add-on.
Yeah.
This one, WordClouds, works pretty much everywhere. So if you're looking for one, if you have the same issue that we had, yeah, WordClouds seems to be working well.
So you can press the link here. Okay. Oops. Careful. Link. Oh, the link. Okay, just another example. And again, this is what Alice was showing us this morning that she created the script for. I did it by hand, but I did it in 10 minutes sitting behind one of our practicum sessions. We had a survey, and I said to Brooke, and actually Brooke was the one who asked me, we normally just have the kids sign in, first name, last name, student ID, and that way we know they're all there. But I added a question. And the question I asked was, what surprises you most so far about student teaching? And she's like, why are we asking that question? I'm like, there's a data gathering opportunity. Come on.
Okay.
And I was in the back. I created this quick slideshow, got it to, published it to the website, and made sure it played automatically. And then during a break, it was up on the screen playing. And it was just an opportunity, again, to show the students our common experiences that, they might have, I'm sure it was in there, it was talking about snow days. This was last spring.
Yes.
Our student teachers, and I bet you this week when we ask the question, I'm going to get the snow days response as well.
Most of our kids have already, this is day number 3 for them since the beginning of the semester 3 weeks ago. So we just get hit with a lot of snow over there.
You go. You have to go back to the presentation, right? So another, and again, one that maybe we wouldn't have thought of as necessarily a data gathering tool is Padlet. And I love that we still talk about Padlet because that's been around since I first started really using technology. But one of the things that I think is really interesting, and if you want to go to the Padlet, because we can show it, it's already open. It's the one with the parts. So one of the things that's really cool about Padlet, and if you go over to the 3 circles, or maybe not 3 circles. Yes, 3 circles. Go down to export. Most of us stop at the cool visual of Padlet. That's fun, okay? But what's really cool about being able to, I don't know if it's sharing. I think so. You scroll down. Yeah. Do you ever know that in Padlet you can export? You can export as an image, as a PDF, as a CSV. So in my world, data world, CSV is just the stripped down form of an Excel spreadsheet or an Excel spreadsheet.
So the way I use this with the students, so sometimes we have students that aren't able to come, just like in every classroom, you've got absences. So for me, if I'm using this as a great brainstorming activity or an idea generator, I'm just going to export that. I'm probably going to take it as a PDF, just so you know. And then I'm going to throw that up to my LMS, so that any student who missed the class has access to what the group was working on together, so that they have that data to be able to know where they're headed to in their next class.
Right.
Sorry, is that a feature in the free version of
It
Padlet?
is. It is. Yep. Most of my tools are free.
Okay.
And
like free.
yeah, and just so you all know, what's frustrating to me about some of the apps that will show us, sometimes the paid stuff is the analytics side, but I tried to, as much as possible, use the free version.
We want our students to be able to, wherever they go, to
Yes.
not be constrained by, oh, I used to have the paid version and now I don't know how to do it. We want to let them know what's free out there so they can take it anywhere they go.
Anything else you want to talk about?
No. I love the other word there that I wrote about crowdsourcing. Alice today was just talking about getting all the responses from everybody, but I call that crowdsourcing. Let your students be the ones to share. So she showed that brilliantly with having us go and search and figure out what the soft skills are that employers are looking for. That idea of crowdsourcing in any of these tools is a great way to be able to use the technology, but you're getting the information, you're getting the intelligence of the room to, you know, share that information instead of just me as the teacher. And I think that's what's exciting about it.
Yeah, so as we were crowdsourcing, she never once said, let's analyze the data. She never said that, but that's what we were doing. We were taking the time to look at what those responses were. We were in our heads seeing commonalities. We were then, she was pointing out some of the commonalities. We talk with our students about modeling that, and I think any teacher can model that with their students by stopping and saying, oh, hey, what are we doing right now? Oh, I think we're analyzing data. Okay, let's talk about that. What are you seeing? What are your interpretations? So we try to do that with our student teachers so they see how it looks. But then we ask them, when you go into the classroom, don't just buzz through. We looked at that Padlet, it looked pretty. Let's ask the students, what are you seeing there? What does that look like to you? And when they start to realize that it's okay to stop and get their students involved that way, that starts to click in their mind that, oh, I need them to start understanding what to do with data. Okay?
Okay, we're going to move into our game-based formative assessment tools, and you know, we love them. You know, Kahoot is fun and quizzes is fun, but I loved this quote, and games provide a method of stealth assessments. Okay, the kids don't even know that they're taking a quiz or they're being assessed because students are highly immersed, engaged, and interacting within game-based tasks. And again, in our context, we're working with pre-service teachers. You might be just working with a teacher that you're just trying to get on board, trying to get them to maybe do something different. Game-based apps are a great way to get them hooked. You know, everybody likes, well, shouldn't say everybody, but we play Jeopardy, we like those kind of game shows, so people like game-based apps. But, again, games allow teachers to observe the learning in real time, and I think that's where, if we can get our teachers to understand that it's not just about playing the game, because that's cool, but as we're playing the game, we start learning about what our students know in real time. We can respond, we can be flexible, we can change our instruction, we can make modifications, we can work with individual students, and that's really the point of using these tools.
And if you are looking to try to integrate technology, I found that games are a perfect entry point for just a number of reasons. Like Kathy mentioned, they're fun, but for teachers, if you ask a teacher, do you have a quiz? And they all go, yes, I have 9,000 of them. Okay, well, let's look at those questions and let's pop them in here. And they go, oh, it's that easy to pop it in? And you go, yeah. And then we say, okay, well, then let's hit play. And then all the students who have their devices are like, oh, I know what to do. And the teacher's like, oh, that is very quick. So we were really excited because that permeated over to our university. The first practicum I went to in 2016, we had a Kahoot. Well, we had QR codes. They didn't know what to do with a QR code. I was like, take out your phone. That's what you use it for. And so they had a Kahoot. And we said, how many of you have ever played Kahoot? And about 3 hands out of 50 went up. And we were like, oh, okay. So every month we're going to give you something we want you to try based on whatever you're working on in your content. So we did Kahoot. They loved it. They came back the next time and said, okay, what's next? This semester we had 104 student teachers, and we said at the first practicum, how many of you use Kahoot? 75% of their hands went up, which made me excited because we do now hear that professors are starting to use it in their classes and that they are starting to engage their students with it, not just as a tool to show them how to teach or pedagogy, but they're using it in their classes to analyze their students' information. So it's nice to see that wave, but this is, to me, game-based is the easiest way to get teachers to actually give it a shot or give it a try.
Okay. And obviously there's just a bunch here. We talk a little bit with our students about thinking about how it's going to work in their class, because each classroom is going to be different. Remember I said one of the reasons why we do this is because we don't know what our student teachers are going to be going into. Each classroom is different. Some classrooms have one-to-one, some of them have Chromebooks, some of them have iPads. Some of our classrooms don't have one-to-one, but maybe they have a cart that they can borrow for the day. other classrooms, they don't have anything except maybe the teacher's computer and maybe something else. So we tried to show them different tools. We also try to help them to kind of analyze like which tool will work best with their kids. And just last week we had a discussion. I knew that our students knew Kahoot. It was interesting. Our students didn't know quizzes. And so we played the quizzes and they were like, oh, this is great. It's a completely different game than Kahoot, and there are certain things that they liked about it different.
And what was neat is as soon as they finished, we didn't tell them. We said, okay, we're going to play quizzes today. Get out your phones. And they were like, oh, quizzes. And we're like, it's like Kahoot. And as soon as we hit go, they're like this, looking at the screen. Well, it's self-paced on your device. So they're like, where's the question? Where's oh. And then they get using it and they start to engage in it. And then when we got done, we said, okay, what did you see was different? Okay, so we started talking about this not written data. This is just how is this forming their next use of quizzes? And they said, oh, it's self-paced. Oh, you know what? I like this better. If I'm working with students that have IEPs or that have processing issues, Kahoot is going to be real difficult. If you play Kahoot, it's look at this, look at the question, look at the, what color, what shape, what color, what's the question? Quizzes was just a lot easier for them to process. So we talk about that. You need to know your audience when you're going to be using any of these tools also, because some of them are going to be better adapted for certain audiences. Yes?
Sorry, I don't even know. Am I allowed to ask
Okay,
questions?
Absolutely, I'm sorry.
Okay.
We're better with
Make
that.
sure. With any of those, can you? I heard you say, do you have a quiz?
Mm-hmm.
So, is there a way that automatically imports it from a certain standard, or?
Certain tools will do that. Kathy's going to talk about the ones
Okay.
that the one that does have standards to it. One other thing that I also do is I sit down with the teacher and say, what's the content you're covering? Because they all have shared libraries of questions.
Okay.
So any content that you are looking for, you can go on, you can duplicate, and then you can modify. So typically I don't usually import, but I modify what's currently there.
Okay.
But some of them do have import tools. I don't know if anybody is aware of which ones have import tools. I am not. Anybody out there using them and importing your own quizzes and tests?
I mean, I know one thing Kahoot just did where you can create in a spreadsheet a list of questions. Again, that was probably not going to help the math teacher like me because there's too much variables and all that stuff. But if you have just regular nice text-based questions, that might be a great way to import it and then tag, your standard, maybe list that in there. And we'll talk about, I don't think any other one, a lot of them have like libraries to look at. But then the other thing is too, once you create it, like if you get a good set of questions, then you just keep reusing them. And so if we can help kind of get that access point of getting them involved, get them into one of these tools that they really start to like, then just start building their own library, keep adding to it, then reuse it over time. That's how I build it.
So I'm sure you have heard of clickers, but our students get very excited when they're working in our elementary classrooms, and that's usually where the technology is not. And we say to them, okay, so do you have a cell phone? Yes, pop it out. And we hand out the QR code for clickers, so it's, if you don't know what it is, online you create your questions, but they provide you with a printable QR code, and they're numbered, and around the QR code there's an A, a B, a C, and a D. And the students will see the question on the board, and then they pick up their QR code, look at it, I think it's answer C, and then they turn it around, and I say, put your letter to the sky. C, up. Then you just take your device, and the teacher just scans the students' QR codes, and as soon as they see it up on the board, they put theirs down, and if you don't see yours up on the board, we can do one more swipe, so you can do multiple swipes. There is no student technology needed for that. And so that is what we're going to be sharing with our students on next Monday. And it's always surprising for them because they're like, oh, I didn't think I could do anything. And now I can do one thing. So just having that technology to do one thing is really inspiring.
And there's a whole group of H&PE teachers online who love clickers for their classes. And they've got, they do all these amazing things with clickers that, we're trying to share this with all sorts of teachers, and again, whether they have devices or not, but H&PE is one of those places where this is
where typically
perfect.
you're not walking around with a laptop while you play badminton. So good to have. Oh, and plickers, you don't need to buy them, just you can laminate your own set. I know some people are like, oh, I don't know about the lamination. I just laminated our set with a cheap laminator and it works fine.
Okay, again, real-time feedback. Game-based apps, they've evolved over time, okay? When I first started using them, you weren't able to put in things like pictures, so I was a math teacher, so I wanted to be able to put in things like graphs. I couldn't do that with the early versions of game-based apps. But now it's fantastic because you're able to insert pictures of things. Also, they're always evolving with their teacher dashboards and what they call their analytics. And again, sometimes teachers maybe miss the analytics part of it, but that's the part where I try to start showing that, you know, yes, we can see it real time in class, but also when you head out of class and maybe at night, you're taking a look at the data a little bit closer. Looking at that teacher dashboard, you can look at it as a class. So how did my class do with certain questions or standards, but then also looking at individual student data.
So an example, this comes from one of my quizzes that I created. It was only a 4 quick question quiz. I say to students, tell me something about what you see. They raise their hands and they say, man, we don't know what number 2's answer is. And I say, yeah, you know what does that say to me as a teacher? Maybe you need to go back over that. So we ask them to be interchanging with the data that they see. So every time we do questions on Kahoot, I'll stop and say, okay, what do we see? Where are we at? This same thing. This is from my dashboard, and I'm able to pull that up. So being able to pull that, you could use your students' ID numbers rather than their names if you wanted to be able to share data to the full class without sharing information about each student.
Okay, and so here's just another example of a quizzes where, and again, a lot of this is common sense, but maybe we didn't think about it in terms of using technology, but this teacher, she gave a pre-test, so question number 5, only 41% got the question right. Then in the post-test, she gave it again, and at that point it went up to 71%. One of our big things that we're trying to work with our teachers on is thinking about what are they going to do for their student learning objective. How are they going to, create a set of lessons that meet a certain problem that they have, and then how are they going to measure if they were successful? This idea of pre-test, post-test.
I'll let you talk because this is your, that's all chicken scratch to me.
I know, I'm sorry, I'm the math teacher. I know it's scary, but we did this as a class. I was working with the Algebra 1 class, and again, notice Flickrs allows you to put in those crazy graphs. So that's one of the reasons why I love the tools, because now they've evolved so well. But I was also able to insert in my equations. This one isn't a good example of that, I just noticed it, but there's a way to insert the equations so they look better and not the ones with the little carrots and stuff like that that make it way too hard. But again, you see what the teacher sees, we can look at the data, we can see the data, and that's where we stop and have conversations in class. So as we're asking the question, what does this tell us? I noticed that the middle one there, nobody got the answer right. Everybody thought it was 13. So that tells me a couple of things as a teacher. Could be I marked the wrong one as the right answer. Possible. Or we definitely don't understand that question.
Whereas you don't need to go back over the next one.
Yeah.
Everybody seems to get that.
Yeah, everybody's got one.
Were those images, or were you able to actually type in the graphs and?
This one was just images, but Go Formative actually works with Desmos, which will let you type it in.
So these were just images that you found online, a JPEG or something?
I created, made them an image.
And then
Awesome.
inserted.
And then as you were working through Flickrs, you were using the teacher paced mode, so you bring up the question, allow them to have the time to work, then answer, and then look at it as a class together.
Right. And by the way, that may seem a lot of work by putting that all in, but then I was able to reuse that. Notice on the side, I had classes. Each one was a little bit different. Each class needed some. So I created what I call just sets of cards. That's basically my questions, and then I threw into each class which questions we were going to do. So they were reusable. I think Go Formative as a math teacher is my favorite app for formative assessment, and it's just because it's so much more advanced as far as being able to do more than just multiple choice questions. As a math teacher, I get a little concerned because I know my students a lot of times will just guess, and that doesn't tell me a whole lot. So being able to insert questions that require something like drawing or writing out their work tells me a little bit more, and that's why I like using that tool. Again, teachers can upload images and PDFs. You mentioned being able to type in the graph. Right now it integrates with Desmos, so you're able to enter the equation in and get the graph and throw it in.
And this is when it connects with standards?
This one you can actually tag the questions, be connected with standards, and you can look at each student's work and give feedback right to the students within the app or within the website. This is an example of what it looks like, but again, this tells me a lot of things as a teacher. So I could look at it just in teacher mode and I see, okay, here's my dashboard. This is what my students' screens, this is what everybody's work on this particular question. You notice here that I clicked on this student and I'm giving personal feedback. I noticed that Jimmy Noodles and Dino didn't put anything in there, so I'm kind of wondering as a teacher what's going on, so I might want to go check them out and make sure they're on task. But I can see visually what they're doing, and I think that was a game changer for me as a math teacher, that we didn't just have to have very strict, limited questions.
So jumping into polls as another way to do formative real-time assessment. I can remember using Poll Everywhere like in 2005, and it was, wow, this is pretty amazing. We're on our cell phones, we get to see those results immediately. Now, 12 years later, we're like, oh yeah, that's common every day. Everything does that. But Poll Everywhere is still out there, and it's still a very valid choice. I think we don't have on Google being able to ask survey questions in your Google Classroom and having real-time polls that way. The opportunity to offer lots of different types of questions, not just your standard true and false and multiple choice. And then PowerPoint or Google add-ons. So is that when you're saying I'm not familiar with that, but you can use that add-on so that as you're presenting, you can ask those polls immediately.
Right. So we have just an example, because yesterday I was in a session, our 60 and 60 session, and Brandon asked how many of us have used Menti, and maybe 25% of the audience said yes. So I figured this would be a good one for you to participate with us on. So if you go to www.menti.com, and the join code is 551341. And I'm going to swap.
1 second, and then we'll, just so they can get in.
But we'll swap.
Okay, let's trade spots.
Because I don't know that you presented sometimes.
Yeah. Anybody need us to leave this up there for a few more seconds? Everybody getting in? It's menti.com, 551341. Hop on in.
So I'm going to go to my Menti dashboard. And you guys are already participating.
Nice.
Are you choosing for the data to be shown this way? Are there different choices?
Yes. Yeah.
So when Kathy chose this question, she chose these answers to come back in a word file.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I originally thought that you could just choose, make the question, and then choose the way you want it to show back, but you actually have to choose the way you want it to come back across as you're making the question. Okay. Yeah.
So again, another immediate way of gathering insight from your audience, gathering insight from your students. Again, this is all data, but again, it doesn't feel like data. And it also tells me a lot, okay? I think, because I'm seeing big words like formative and or informative and feedback, that a lot of you are starting to see that it's different than maybe what you might have thought of. Lauren could still be part of it, and that's
I
okay.
like this one.
It's
We haven't converted those people yet, which is okay. start using some of the tools, you might find that you might get converted. Oh, did boring get smaller? Oh no, boring got bigger. Okay, never mind. So yeah, so it's nice to be able to do this, and once again, stop, ask your students to look at it and ask them what that means. I don't know how many times I would go into our high school science classes and they'd be getting ready for the Keystone or the PSSA at the time, and they would say, our kids don't know how to read charts and graphs and analyze. And I'm like, okay, so what are you doing? And they're like, nah, we're just reviewing that. And I'm like, you've got to put it in every day. Go ahead.
Just a question. I don't know if I was inferring something from what you said, but it looks like Menti and Poll Everywhere do a very similar function with one another. But
yes.
you mentioned that Poll Everywhere goes back quite a few years. Do you find that Mentimeter offers better things for use in the classroom than Poll Everywhere? Or?
I think it just seemed like it was a little easier. It seemed more user friendly. And it's real quick. I just had a professor, and we were just emailing back and forth last week. She wanted something like this, and I shared with her this tool, and she got it immediately and was able to use it. Whereas I think Poll Everywhere, I actually had recommended that tool to another professor probably about 2 years ago, and I actually had to go to her office and help her. So I just think Mentimeter just is a little more user friendly.
And Mentimeter gives you a lot of different. Does Poll Everywhere give us the variety of?
Yeah. Poll Everywhere probably is like the top of the top. It's just not as user friendly, but it does give you tons more options.
Okay.
Yes.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Does maybe both Poll Everywhere and Mentimeter, does it, the larger the word, that means that the more people have chosen that word?
Yes.
I never knew that.
Yeah, and it was funny because we question word cloud, so we're always questioning, does that app do it the same way another app does it? And so that was one thing we checked last night because we wanted to make sure that just like Wordle, just like Tuxedo, that word cloud also did that same, had that same ability to make it, the more it's repeated, the larger the word.
Okay.
So yeah, and that's very common in analytics now. It's everywhere.
Okay.
Is there any way to make this not anonymous, or will it always be anonymous with Mentimeter?
So, and that's something you have to think about. So, and I talked to our students about that. So, how many times do you need the data to be associated with kid, or is it okay for it to be anonymous? And so, in this case, I probably would have to ask my students to add their names to it. Like, there isn't any way, like even what Alice had us do today. But with Google Forms, if it was a Google Classroom, you automatically. So that's the part that you have to just decide. But I think, hopefully you'll see from what we're doing here, yes, we're worried about data associated with specific kids and their test scores and where they're at and that sort of thing. But even understanding data from this broad perspective of your entire class gives us insight as well.
Right.
But that's a good question. That's one that you just have to decide what's more important.
So these are my favorite. So Kathy she had her Go formative. I love interactive presentations. In a world where so many students are now getting one-to-ones, so many districts are going that way. Pear Deck and Nearpod, to me, really make learning more interactive for our students rather than them sitting here just watching a presentation, direct instruction. They're actually participating in it. So it's got embedded formative assessment. I can take my Google Slides, or I can take a PowerPoint, if you're still using PowerPoint, and I can upload those to Pear Deck, or I can get the Google add-on, the Google Slides add-on for Pear Deck, and it'll automatically take my slides right over to Pear Deck, so that I can then add formative assessment questions that come in a variety of forms. That's what I like about it. We use the free version of Pear Deck. We share both with our students so that they understand there's the free version out there. But I always tell them, if I were back in my classroom and I was one-to-one, it's the one piece of technology I would buy. I would pay the money for it to get all the extras because it provides you with so many extras in the ability to draw and ask questions and interact in the formative assessment. Keep students on task. I remember presenting last year to some of my old colleagues, and I was presenting, and we were using Pear Deck, and you always have that person says, yeah, but you know what? They're just going to go forward. They're just going to look at your whole presentation, or they're going to go back. And I said, oh, okay, go ahead and give it a try. won't let me. I said, I know, because students have to stay with you. I said, so if you want control, you've got control. You can keep them at your same pace. Doesn't mean they won't open another tab, but it was sort of the naysayers that went, oh, okay, yeah, I can still have control over my students. Real view, time responses, and sharing. Just like everything we're showing you, all of the technology that's out there currently shows immediate real-time responses. And I think that's what our students need to see, to be able to talk with them about analyzing and interpreting what they see.
And then just another quick note here, sometimes doing the all group presentation isn't how you're setting up your class that day. You might have stations where students are going around and answering in different questions, or I know Paraduc has kind of what, I forget what they call it, but it's like their homework feature where you can send the presentation at home and they can work on it at their own pace at home and answer the questions within. So a lot of the tools keep evolving and adding different features, I'm sure, that teachers have been asking them for. And obviously we're modeling it in a whole group setting, but a lot of these, again, because we're trying to tell our teacher candidates that you don't know what you're going to get. So if you're going to try one of these tools, a lot of them will be like, well, my teacher doesn't let us do presentations. I'm like, okay, well, so we're not going to do presentations, but could you guys do a small station and have some questions in there and have the kids work on it that way? Well, maybe that might work. And so we're just trying to give them flexibility and options.
So in the free version, this usually is what sells it for our K through 2 students, because they usually sit there when we talk and they're like, oh, my kids are never going to get it, they don't read, they don't understand, blah, blah. And then we say, okay, you responded. Could a kindergartner tell me what they're seeing? And they go, yeah, that there's a lot of good going on and a couple bads going on. And when they start to see that that's okay and that's analysis, they go, oh, really? That's all I have to talk with that? Yeah, you have to talk about that. And what does that mean that all those people have the thumbs up? And that it's a discussion point for kids as small as 5 years old. So this is part of the free version, to be able to drag and drop the dots of knowledge where your comfort level is. So having video response. I've lived an 8-year life as a TV video production teacher. I love video. Getting students to use video was very difficult because, like our keynote speakers have said, they don't like to see themselves. They don't like to hear themselves. But we live in a world where multimedia is becoming a part of everyday life. So getting our students engaged and used to seeing themselves and hearing themselves, and kids would say, I don't like my voice. And I'm like, okay, well, change it. Make it what you want it to sound like. And so they start to find comfort in that. But we started using Flipgrid. I haven't used Synth yet. But Flipgrid is just an easy way. We start out this semester asking our students what is their hope for the semester. And we reach out to other faculty members. I reach out to cooperating teachers, and I say, can you share your hope for our students? So all they had to do is I had a QR code on their table. They scanned it. They got the app for that, and then they just hit record. And they got, you can give them 30 seconds, you can give them 2 minutes, you can limit the amount of time. But what's really nice is then they record, they take a snapshot of themselves, and then it comes up here. I do explain to them that this is going to be online prior, so that they are aware that this is out there, even though it's protected on my Flipgrid, because I want them to be aware that other folks are going to see that. And it gives them ownership, but it also explains to them that that's something they have to talk with their students about. Because remember she talked about somebody drawing a penis? Oh yeah, imagine. But you can have control over this and you can moderate it so that you as the teacher can view it and then release it to the group. So that's the one thing we do.
And one thing I would just mention here, again, remember that quiet student? That was me, who didn't want to be called upon. The other part was I wasn't confident, even though I'm a math teacher now, but back then I wasn't confident in my math abilities, so I tried to hide it. So our teachers would always ask us to show our work. That's the thing. I was a lazy student, so I didn't show my work, wasn't confident in my work, and then I would hand in my work, and so they obviously thought I was dumb because I didn't hand in hardly anything. I think if I would have had a tool like this where I could have talked through the problem, I put
And
in
you
Excel.
would not have had to be on camera.
Nope.
You could have had it
I
just
could have
right
done
on your
it.
paper as you worked and actually talked yourself through that, so they understood. Excellent. Can you, oh, I was gonna say, okay, we've got to.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
okay,
Here we go.
we're gonna go quick.
Wrapping it up.
This is a bonus. I will share the PowerPoint after our session today, so don't try to write down everything, but you saw Alice's passion this morning for Google Forms and Google Sheets. You saw her use script. She's created another idea, and when I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, that's data in a nutshell. But it's different because what she created is kind of this infographic report card creator where she takes the data from a Google sheet and it crunches it together and then creates these individual pages that are infographic report cards on a student.
And when they're this quick, once you get that set up in your classroom and it's that quick, as a parent, I'd rather see that than 96, 73. That tells me nothing. But if this can be automated in your classroom and I can see my child's strengths and their weaknesses, we can talk about it. It gives us at home a talking point, rather than just saying, what did you learn at school today?
Yeah.
It'd be really good for student-led conferences
That's
as
what I
well.
was
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so many opportunities, because this is where I'd also mention one of the, we keep talking about Hattie. One of the things that Hattie says is students need to be involved with their own learning, their own data, own analysis. They could be creating this spreadsheet that keeps track
Collects
of
all
these.
that data for themselves.
Yeah.
So that's it. If you're going to be providing assessment, know your why. Know why you're doing it. Collect data only if you are going to use it. Otherwise, you're wasting your time and you're wasting their time. Take advantage of gathering data opportunities because they're all around you. It does not have to be numbers, and hopefully you saw that today because we really didn't share numbers with you. We shared words, we shared perceptions, understandings. Pause and discuss. Get your students to actually analyze the work, not just you don't do all the hard work yourself. And then check out the data dashboard and what are those sharing and export functions. Those are the key things that we want you to think about when you're going to be analyzing data with your students or having other teachers learn how to analyze data. And if you have any questions, we're there for you. Thank you.
You guys want to take a quick
Oh, yes, we do. With our little,
No, with your phone, I'll send it to you.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry, I should have said that.
Can we post it?
oh wait, here, come to this side. Come to this side.
Oh, okay.